Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchists Dave, joined as always by this fellow outlaw of imagination.
Nerdarchists Ted, greetings adventurers, dreamers, and occasional lawbreakers. Big City Zoo is a jungle of rackets, betrayals, and animal mobsters enforcing their own brand of justice.
The Zoo Mafia justice is personal. If someone betrays the mob, retribution is fast, brutal, and quiet, because if the humans catch a whiff of people stuff, everybody pays the price.
So don't forget to look at the description where you can find all the links to Zoo Mafia. Check out the Kickstarter page, which we will eventually push that go button, and that's the only way to get notified, as well as check out the regular content over on nerdarchy.com. So family business, settling scores inside the mob without drawing outside attention.
This is something that doesn't happen very well in our games. Like, things get settled, but it's been pretty noisy.
Well, I mean, we've had a lot of safecracker fun with dynamite, I must say, and dynamite is just a bit of an attention getter.
Yeah, well, even just a regular pistol makes a lot of noise.
It's true. But that's one of the great parts about Zoo Mafia is there's so many different angles to play. Like when you look at mob stuff, there's a lot of content in books, in movies that can all be used for inspiration. The Godfather, it's all about the family. You know, you got to protect the family. You gotta. And like, we haven't run that game per se, but like we've run elements that touch on those factors. And I've written a couple of blog posts that talk about family and how easy it could be to just be like, all right, if you were to be brought in, like, what does that mean? Like, you're not just like, okay, well, we're hiring you. You're just an employee. It's like, no, when you're here, you're part of us. You're part of this. It's not a crew. It's a family business. The thing says, you wrong me, and holy shit, things are gonna get hot. But somebody wrongs you, and we're gonna deal with it.
So there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? Wrongs that can be perpetrated from one mafia against another mafia, but then also like internally when someone breaks the rules and the laws of that mafia, of that group, what happens? How do you settle it? What does that look like? We've definitely had that happen in a couple of our games. In certain instances, there was a snitch that was a worm that was fleeing the zoo, and it kind of like made its way out in an apple and ends up in an elementary school. And the gang has to go and retrieve a stool pigeon in worm form and bring it back for mob justice, right? They weren't part of the actual justice. They just did the retrieval. And then the mob boss that they were working for, I believe that time it was Carlo Hambino, was the one that was going to decide the fate and figure that part out. But that's just one instance. There's also been other instances where the mob boss's girlfriend had an affair with one of his lieutenants, and that was very personal. And again, the players were sent out to retrieve these two people that wronged Carlo Hambino. Everyone's wronging poor Carlo. And then he personally dispensed what he considered justice for this betrayal. And also the players kind of got to see like a harder, darker side of this particular mob boss, who is generally hands off and doesn't really get his hands dirty. He's more of the mind behind the muscle. But like I said, this time it was kind of personal. And he felt like he needed to settle that score, and no one else should do that. It also kind of showed a level of his commitment to the mob rules, as well as, even though he's up to this point being betrayed as this person, or not betrayed, portrayed as this person who doesn't get their hands dirty and is kind of above the fray. It got to show another side of him that was like, oh well, he must have come up through the ranks somehow, and oh, that part is still in him. He's still a hardened criminal. And he can get down and dirty if he needs to. He just prefers not to nowadays.
Man, you're making me feel bad that we betrayed him.
Well, yeah, again, 3 strikes and you're out. What are you gonna do?
And it is. I mean, we had a very bizarre strategy for that game, which we ran offline, but absolutely amusing.
The zookeeper's suspicious gaze. Does justice come from outside, or is it all internal? All right, Ted. I've been thinking, right, as we were coming up to this topic, right? We do have law enforcement that is kind of a reflection of more modern law enforcement in the Zoo Mafia game, and they're referred to as the Fuzz, or flat paws, right? Is what they're called, and they're just police officers, and they're trying to keep the peace in the zoo, make sure the laws are being followed, no one steps out of line. But also it's during Prohibition, so a lot of them are kind of corrupt and maybe don't agree with that particularly. So there's that going on as well. Also, we've also introduced the Claw Patrol, which is like the Feds version of the Zoo Mafia world, FBI. But it got me thinking, say if there's law enforcement and there's different tiers of it, then there's probably judges and there's probably a criminal system, right? They have something going on.
Right.
And I do feel like they would imprison criminals, but technically everyone is kind of in a prison already because they're in the zoo.
So how would it work?
That's what I want. Did they figure out how to confine them to their enclosures? Like maybe they know how to put in place locks or something that the other animals won't be able to so easily get past.
That was my first instinct of like maybe there is a way that sure the animals know how to get out of their enclosures, but what if the way out is a unified acceptance by the zoo animals? And if you got the cinch, you got this clamp, whatever you want to call it, that's put on your cage, it's something that the animals know about and the zookeepers have no clue. And it's a way like, okay, your jail is literally you're stuck in your cell. So like, sure, somebody can come and visit you just like the humans would. There's no touching, there's no being in there with. And it could be an element of like, all right, well, does that mean if you're in an enclosure with others of your animal type, like that they're let out and like the flat paws would need to come there every night and let the others out? What kind of shenanigans could be done of like, oh, well, I'm locked in my cage, but what if I trade clothes with the other person and I sneak out as Bob and not Ted, whatever.
Well, I was kind of thinking too, like you said clamp, I was like, oh, maybe they do actually just shackle them, right? And the other animals in the enclosure might be actually responsible for seeing that done because of them having the secret life inside the zoo outside of the prying eyes of the humans. They might all have to take a more of an active role. Like they're all in danger if the humans find out
right
that the animals are more than they appear. So it might be more of a community thing as well.
Certainly an interesting thought. So when loyalty breaks, exile, execution, or more creative punishments, what do you do? Go ahead.
That kind of circles back, right? Like what do you do, right? You talk about shackling them, about the community being involved. We haven't really done this in our games, but maybe we should think about, is there an organized watch? Especially if citizens are concerned about the cops being on the take, right? Like, do they then they can't rely on them? Do they form their own town watch and do their own patrols? Probably more for like independent and more petty stuff. Because what are they really going to do against organized crime? That's going to be a bit tougher.
I couldn't agree more. It's a scenario that I feel like the animals have to be on the safe area because their very lives are at stake. How your everyday world, your everyday life is impacted by what everyone else does. We've run a number of campaigns now, and there have been some games where it's just been utterly brutal and bloody, and it's like, all right, how do the humans not know about this shit? What happens in the moments before dawn? Is somebody really going around and patching up bullet holes and disposing of corpses? Or is what makes the have to make this happen? So like it's crazy. Like, do they have? Is there like an inside man of somebody that somehow has connection with the admin and like, okay, well, you screwed up. You're going to get transferred to another zoo, and we can make sure that the paperwork gets done so that you're gone. You're not going to make trouble for this zoo anymore because, you're going to Central City, you're going back to the wilds or wherever it is.
I like that idea a lot, and I don't think it's a connection per se as they figured a way to interrupt the system and remove information and insert their own. So, I mean, back then everything's going to be hard copy, it's going to be paper. So they have forgers that forge the documents that say, oh, this animal went out it was transferred out, like you said, has gone to another zoo or whatever. And that could be one way for them to actually implement exiles and executions that are sanctioned by the criminal system, the justice system, I should say, in the communities that are Zoo Mafia. Because if you just have animals missing all the time, it's going to begin to be a little bit suspicious. I mean, it's bad enough with the mob activity going on. That tends to make enough bodies as it is. And if you were to add on to it, just like when the cops have to deal with the criminals as well, they might be thinking in a way that is more about protecting the community, not just from the individual by punishing them, but protecting the community from notice from the humans. Like making that all work together is super important. What good is punishing your criminals if you only get caught by the humans and kind of ruins the whole way of life for the zoo animals and Zoo Mafia?
We look at loyalty. I look at this not only from loyalty to the other animals around you, but to the individual family that you're trying to work for the mob. So the way we've been playing is you're trying to get made, but you could run games where like you're already made and you're just trying to like stabilize or improve the power base of whatever mob that you've got. You could enter into some moral questions or enter into some loyalty questions, and then it's like, all right, well, as you do a job, you have tough choices, and you might have to do something that's not good for the family. And when that happens, what is the fallout? What does your boss do and say when you've done something that harms the family? Like, are you instantly ousted, or is there something else that happens?
Yeah. So from that angle as well, too, it's like, how does the crime organization interact with and deal with the straights, right? Regular citizens. It's gonna be bad for business if their guys are roughing up people all the time and everyone's scared and they can't go on with their normal lives, because a healthy, seedy underworld thrives more so when everything else is working. So that it kind of like the fortunes become hitched together. So also a lot of times like mob bosses are kind of depicted as heroes in their communities because maybe they help out. One of the dock workers loses his job and they send food over for the family so they're not hungry. And they're always trying to, hey, why don't you come work for me? And even though they're like, well, no, I'm not going to do that because they know what the deal is, right? They don't want to be criminals. And there's like an unwritten rule. Okay, they don't want to do it and they've never done this life. So like they're kind of allowed to say no as long as they stay on their side of the street. Right, and I think that could be an interesting dynamic to have in the games as well. Add more depth to the leaders of these organizations. Now, like your mooks, your rough and tumble, goons and regulars, like they're probably not going to care about this, but they might care about the don of their family, so they don't mess with it. Where those that are higher up in the organization and are smarter and more cunning, they understand the value of these rules and keeping an order and keeping the chaos from evolving. And that's the problem whenever there's a mob war. It's complete chaos and it disrupts everybody's business. They're not going to want that. They'll probably have these rules in place in order to protect the status quo and keep things the way they are.
And that the business is the important part of how it all flows. And that's why I kind of like Carlo Gambino, is because he's the ideal businessman. He's looking at it from the aspect of like, all right, it's not personal, it's business. He'll make decisions that are, as long as it's line in the pockets, that's where we need to go. And we've used that element for both the GM and the player base, and made for a lot of fun moments.
He has got the softest touch of all the dons that we use. For that reason, because he doesn't do it because he's a nice guy. He just logically sees it as this is the best way to do business. This is going to be the most expedient way to get what he wants. And he's also not a sadist either. He's not sadistic. He doesn't gain any pleasure out of doing these awful things. It's just an ends to a means to him, where you have Machine Gun Otto, who is a psychopath, and for him the chaos is what he lives for, and inflicting harm and pain and all that stuff is part of his shtick. So he's usually the mob boss that like players also kind of want to not work for, because he's so unpredictable, and also like the smarter characters are going to be like, well, his methodologies, while effective, are probably not good for business. And also, if you compare him to Carlo Gambino was keeping things calm, things are running smooth. On the other side, you got Machine Gun Otto.
So I was gonna say, like, if he's there, like, if he is so crazy and chaotic, is it someone that you feel like you can be loyal to? Is he going to make rash decisions? I feel like that's another thing. Are supposed to be about loyalty. Let me prove to you that I can serve your purposes, or I can make your stay in this world better. So when you've got chaos incarnate that is Machine Gun Otto, it's like, well, how can I work for you if I feel like I screw up a little bit and you might just mow me down with your Tommy gun?
Well, not only that too, right? Like, that is definitely one aspect of it, but the other is too, like, would you rather work for the guy that's getting stuff done, and like it's almost like you like go into a regular job, you go, you punch in, you punch out, you earn your peanuts for the day, and everyone goes home? Or would you rather work for the guy that's pure chaos? You have to worry about what his organization is going to do. He's probably made up of a lot of like-minded individuals, and what kind of heat is that going to bring? Are you always going to be looking over your shoulder for the flat paws and claw patrol? Because while as a criminal you always have to worry about that, but the way Machine Gun Otto does business is going to draw unwanted attention, and far more often than anyone's probably going to want. One of your crew snitched to the humans. Do you quietly make them disappear, frame someone else, or use it to your advantage?
All right, so thanks for flying, hiding, and hustling with us through the murky waters of justice. We hope it gives you new ideas for your games.
Smash that like button, subscribe, and